Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about a very new topic in the realm of communication at workplace. Let me start with a very simple idea that might shift the way you look at your workplace communication forever. Every conversation leaves behind karma. That might sound a little spiritual, a little abstract, but stay with me because this idea of corporate karma is deeply practical, emotional, and all the more it is human. And once you're able to see this, you will never be able to unsee it. And that's the beauty of this particular concept. So now let's dive a bit deeper into the basic understanding of what is corporate karma. Here's what I mean. We are taught to focus on the content of communication. Say we've been told, use the right words, make the right points, speak very clearly, follow up with an acknowledgement. All of that we might have heard, right? But what no one teaches us is this: it's not just what you say, it is the energy that you leave behind what you say or converse. So it's not what you speak, your words, your uh, sentences that you speak, but the energy that you leave behind after you're done with your communication. And that's what matters. You could even ask these questions to yourself after once you're done with your communication. Did that person feel hurt? Did the team feel safer or confused after the meeting? Was something left unspoken hanging in the air? Because that is what is the karma of communication. And I've seen it shape trust, shape culture, teams, projects, your own leadership, organizations. And let me tell you a story which which is what created this whole new concept. It was a year of 2022. I was in this place called Suzhou in China. It was one of the most critical business trips of my life because one of our client, one of the biggest car maker we worked with, had called us all for a critical face-to-face meeting. The message: he was ready to shut down the project. And this particular project was contributing to 20 percentage of our revenue. And that was not very simple. It was a project which was happening over 3 years, and he was not very happy with the project, so he wanted to call it off. And this particular project was a global collaboration. There was a customer team in China, there was a development team in Romania, and there was another team in India, which I just joined as a core software project lead. And all of this happened during the COVID season. The tensions were really high, visibility was really poor, and the stakes again was really high because, as I mentioned, 20 percentage of our revenue comes from only one this particular stakeholder. So what happened was that we all gathered, which in a room, which I want to call it the actual war zone, which is how it all felt at the starting. The conversations started as to how we should prepare for the presentation for tomorrow. But what it actually shifted is that the conversation shifted from putting the facts out in the presentation to finger pointing. Somebody said, "Hey, you constantly gave us changing requirements." Another person said, "You weren't really flexible with your timelines. You took too long to deliver code. You know what? You rushed development without understanding our limitations." Too many topics which flew out in the air. And suddenly I saw people were standing, fists on the table, red faces, flared nostrils, and fingers in the air. I sat back and thought this was not a project meeting anymore. It was more of that cultural collision that happened. And I just stood there watching all of what was happening. I was new to the team, no emotional history with the project, just absorbing what all was happening. And for me, it was all that wave of chaos which was happening in the room. And then something shifted in me. I didn't have the technical context. I didn't know who was right, who was wrong. But I did know this. If we keep going like this, we won't just lose a project, but we will lose each other. And that is a moment I stood up. I said very calmly but clearly, folks, we are not here to blame each other. Tomorrow we have a customer coming in to meet us, and we are here to win the customer back. And that very moment, I could feel it. The room exhaled. People sat down, temperature dropped, and we switched from that accusation to the solution mode. And that one sentence that changed the energy in the room, and it actually helped us save the deal. Yes, the next day we were able to present it to the customer, and he was able to get confidence out of it. And he said, okay, go ahead with the project. And we all happily flew back. Yes, the last flight back to India, because the China was shutting down because of COVID. While I was flying back, I kept thinking, what just happened in that moment? I didn't offer something very brilliant. I didn't even solve a technical issue. But what I saw happen was a reset in the energy. And that's when it hit me really hard. Communication is not just about transferring information, but it is about transmitting energy. It either clears the air, like what happened in the China story, or it even clogs it. It either makes the space feel lighter, or it could also make the space feel heavier. And that's where this whole journey began for me. And that's how corporate karma was born. And now that you've heard the story, how it all started, let's take a step deeper. What exactly is corporate karma? I would like to break it with few examples so that we will recognize how corporate karma happens in our own workplace. So that day in China, something subtle but powerful thing happened, right? It didn't fix the process. I did say something really complex. I did not even know what was happening technically because I was very new to the project. All that I did was that I simply shifted the energy in the room. And in that moment, I realized something we rarely talk about in the corporate world, and that is communication is emotional, communication is energetic, and communication has karma in it. Not in that mystical sense of what goes around comes around, but in the most practical and observable sense that every interaction leaves energy behind. And that energy is what I call the corporate karma. So, what exactly is this? Corporate karma is this emotional and the energetic imprint your communication leaves behind in the workplace. It's not about how you polished your message, it is all about how your message lands. It is about what it leaves in the room, clarity or confusion. Is it making the room lighter or heavier? Trust or fear? Motivation or resistance? Corporate karma is what people carry forward after your meeting, your emails, your one on one meetings, and it is that emotional aftertaste of your communication. So, the question right now is corporate karma all about being nice? The answer is no. Because corporate karma is not just about being nice or overly polite. It's definitely not about sugarcoating or smiling when there is a problem which is happening in the team. Smiling when the culture is breaking down. Smiling when the team is dysfunctional. It is definitely not about it. It's about that emotional integrity that we all carry as leaders. It is about that alignment between your intention and the impact that you carry through your communication. This is very, very important. It is the most important sentence that all of us have to remember. Emotional corporate karma is about the alignment between your intention and the impact that you can create out of your communication. Because here's what happens. You might intend to be helpful, but your tone was really sharp. You are very critical in your feedback. You might be rushing for time, but someone experiences it as dismissal. They think that you don't give them enough time. You might think you're being very professional, but you can come out as cold. The karma builds not just because of what you said, because of how they felt it. And that is the difference that you create from the intention to the impact. If it is very well aligned, then you're making a proper corporate karma. Let's bring this into life with a few examples that all of us can recognize from our own workplaces. Let's say you give feedback with a very good intent of getting that person up to the next stage, for that person to improve. But what if the person shuts down afterwards? Possible? It has happened a lot of times. You end a Zoom call and then everybody ends the Zoom call without a smile on their face. How many of us go through this every day? You say, let's discuss this later, and the team goes quiet for days together. You ask any question, and everyone avoids the eye contact. Nobody wants to respond to the questions that you ask in a meeting. What is basically all of this? That's awkward tension, invisible discomfort amongst the team members. And that's exactly what is corporate karma at play. It's the vibe in the workplace that you can feel, if you can feel it. And most times, people don't talk about it. They feel it and they start carrying it. And that's how corporate karma comes into your team's places. Now, I'd like to introduce another concept because I want to talk about the residue because karma lives in the residues. Here's a simplest way to recognize corporate karma and ask yourself, what energy is left behind after I leave the room? What would people like to talk about me or think after I've left the room? Because karma lives in the residue. And what's residue? Those leftover stress, those unresolved doubts in the minds of people, those silent withdrawal from people where they don't want to have eye contact with you, the subtle trust drop which happens during meeting. And over time, all of this keeps building up. And over time, this is what shapes the culture of your teams, your organizations. We say communication is a key all the time, right? But this is invisible key, the energetic quality that actually unlocks or locks down the culture. And that's how cultures are made in the team. And we don't quite talk about it, it just happens. And people feel it and they carry it. They don't talk about it. Now, let's take a step to go a little more deeper into what is corporate karma. It is that unspoken but deeply felt force in every interaction that you have with your team. It makes a leader feel either magnetic or misunderstood. It has what shapes the culture more than that strategies or slogans or even those vision and mission statements that you have on the walls of your organization could. And that's how powerful corporate karma is. The question is this just a feeling? The feeling of the residue, the feeling of the emotional aftertaste that you leave? No, because all of this is explained by science. Now, let's explore the neuroscience, the emotional psychology behind what is happening when you leave behind those residue and emotional aftertaste that you give it to people. So far, we have spoken about corporate karma in a way that it feels very intuitive. You might also be listening to this, nodding, thinking, yes, I felt it in my meeting. There was a shift during the conversation. But this is just the feeling in the gut. No, it is not just a gut feeling. It is science, and science supports what we've already known very deep down, what we have felt deep down in everyday conversations that we have in workplace. Why? Because humans are the energetic beings. We transmit emotional signals every moment, either consciously or unconsciously. And that's how humans work. And those signals, emotional signals that we have, they shape the outcomes of what we speak, how we behave, and all of that. So they say human beings are not thinking machines that feel, but feeling machines that think. So we're all that feeling machines. So now let's take a look at how the research has happened behind all of this. The first one that I wanted to talk about is that emotional contagion, the way we catch feelings like it's a cold, right? Have you ever heard about this term emotional contagion? It is a psychological phenomena where literally people catch each other's emotions. And there are studies which was done by researchers, and one of the researchers that I'd like to quote is Daniel Goleman. And his research shows that this happens all the time in offices, especially between the team members. Because they say leaders' tension spreads like a wildfire. Leaders' calm and presence can actually reset an entire room. Like the example that we saw at the start, the China story. Because these are not magic. It is basically the act of the mirror neurons, your brain's way of syncing with others emotionally. So, this is how it works. So, when someone communicates with any emotion, frustration, fear, ego, what happens? You feel all of that emotion, the same emotion with which the person talks or communicates. And then you mirror it back, even if you don't mean to do it. And that's exactly is what is called that emotional transmission. And that is karma in motion. Now let's take the science of the mirror neurons. Let's talk about mirror neurons. So it was basically discovered in 1990s, where the brain cells activate not only when something when somebody uh, tells something, but it is also when you see someone else do it. That is when your brain cells activate. So it's why you yawn when someone you see yawns. When somebody laughs, you start automatically smiling. It's why your energy shifts when a manager enters the room stressed. Have you seen that when you are in a meeting, you are all very happy chit chatting amongst your peers, your team members, and then you see your manager entering with a lot of stress in his mind and body, which you can visibly see. There is an immediate shift in the energy of the teams. The teams which is laughing now get stressed looking at their manager. So you're basically syncing up energetically, whether you like it or not. How many of us want to be stressed? Nobody. But what really happens when you see someone, you get that energy. You don't like it, but you're stressed as well. So when a leader communicates with calm, focus, warmth, team begins to regulate all of these nice emotions along with the leader. The performance improves, collaboration flows, and that's how the culture of team begins. When a leader is reactive, cold, rushed, the same happens with the team. So that is how your mirror neurons operate. So your communication vibe becomes your leadership brand. They start giving the labels. Okay, this manager is always like this, because what happens is that they're receiving the emotions and then they are transmitting the same back. Now, why does all of this happen? I'd like to zoom in a little bit more into amygdala. Have you heard about amygdala hijack? And that's very closely associated with the psychological safety. And psychological safety is where the team's performance, high performing teams will be born. Now, what is amygdala? I would love to call it as the brain's fear sensor. Amygdala is a part of your brain which acts more like a sensor. It is designed to detect whether there is a threat or not. And it doesn't know to distinguish the words, right? If I have to say, hey, you've disappointed me, just words. But people could actually be looking at it as you're fired. What really happened in between you're fired to I am disappointed in you? We are vastly different. But amygdala will not be able to distinguish between you are fired to I'm disappointed in you. And that's when the tone matters. If the other person feels what you're talking is unsafe, even if your words are neutral, what happens? The moment people realize or feel unsafe with what you're telling, there's an emotional hijack which happens, which means the sensor in the brain triggers a threat, detects a threat, and then it triggers a emotional or amygdala hijack. And this basically puts your logical brain to shut down mode. And what happens when all of this happens in the workplace? People shut down, creativity drops, no innovation, defensiveness rises, there's a lot of arguments, communication stops flowing, which is the biggest threat in an organization. A simple sentence delivered with a wrong entry can shut the teams for days together. And this is why psychological safety is now considered one of the strongest predictors of the team's performance. And it all happens if you can mend your corporate karma and put all of that in place. Now, one more aspect that we love to be very clear is the emotional memory bank that all of us have. So I spoke about amygdala, right? The emotional sensor of the brain. So what also happens is that the brain doesn't remember facts the way it remembers the feelings. Even statistics says stories are retained in your brain 22 times better than the facts or data. Why? Because stories have emotions. And this statistics goes a long way to tell that the feelings are caught in your brain much better than the facts and figures that you talk in your meetings. That one meeting where you felt humiliated, is it still vivid in your memory? That boss who made you feel small in front of the entire team, you might have never forgotten it. There's also good things that you will never forget. It's not always the bad things, right? It could also be a teammate who paused, who looked into your eyes and truly listened to you. Is it still a vivid memory that is there etched in your mind? Why? Because emotions get stored in the limbic system, the brain's emotional memory bank, and it stays longer with us. That's why they say people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel because words fade away, PowerPoints are forgotten, but the emotional residue that you leave with people remain for a longer time. Corporate karma is just this, the emotional footprints that we leave on each other. So you might ask me, Kavina, so far we spoke about how are we in a meeting, our one on one conversations, a lot of verbal communication. So maybe you might as well ask, Kavina, what about emails? What about those chat messages that we leave in the workplace? Here's the truth. Every written communication also has karma associated. Have you ever felt relatable to any of whatever I'm going to say? That one line reply that people give, have you felt cold about it? Or an urgent Teams ping at 10 p.m. that has ruined your peace and even sleep? Quick call, question mark from your boss, and you sit and wonder, what is this all about? Have you ever received all capital letters in your email and then it just feels your stomach clench? Because it's not about whether it is spoken or written communication. It is not about language. It is all about energy. Every time you communicate, be it spoken or written communication, you're always transmitting, even in silence. And that is how important corporate karma is all about. Now, let's tie it back to you as a leader, as a communicator, as a culture builder. The research is very clear. Teams mimic the emotional tone of their leader. Communication is more than clarity, it's that energetic congruence between the alignment between what you think as intention and what you deliver, the outcome as that emotional aftertaste. Leaders who manage their internal energy will be able to create an external alignment much better. So here's a leadership shift that all of us should be very aware and careful about. One, you don't just manage tasks or projects, you manage energy, you manage karma. And this is the bridge between being heard and being followed. We don't want to be being heard, right? We all want to be being followed. And that's where the birth of real leadership happens. Now, now that we've spoken about neuroscience, psychology, amygdala, all of that, let me show you a framework that maps all of this out step by step. Now, let's bring it together into a model you can see, you can apply, and you can share it with your outside world as well. This is one of the core frameworks I've developed in the corporate karma. Let's call it the karmic loop of communication. This will help you diagnose, redesign, repair in case the energy has gone down in a conversation or your teams. So, this can be applied at all the stages where you are with your team right now. Now, you might ask, why is it karmic communication loop? Why is it a loop? Because communication isn't linear at all. You don't just speak, do you? We also get a response. And there's a cycle involved, and that 360 energy exchange, which comes a full cycle, is what I would like to call it the karmic communication loop. And when that cycle somewhere is left open, incomplete, that's where we create a residue. And that's where the problem happens between you and your team members. And that's when the misunderstanding starts, there's a morale dip in the team, productivity goes down, no creativity, no innovation, and the culture feels very heavy, and people get shut down in the teams, in the meetings, in every other possible way. So let's walk you through the 5 stages of the loop. The first stage in the karmic loop is that intention. This is the exact energy behind what you want to say. This includes your mindset, the emotions that which you carry with the message, the urgency with which you want to deliver, the assumptions that you have in your mind, the biases that you have as leaders. All of this works brilliantly behind the intention, the energy behind what you want to say. The second step is the expression. So this is how your message is delivered. And largely, the aspects which depends upon this is that the tone with which you speak, the timing, the platform, the body language, your posture, the way you give out your gestures, all of this really matters in the second stage. It's not just what you say, it's how it sounds, how it feels, and how it lands with your team member, anybody whom you're trying to communicate. So that is stage two. Stage three is reception. This is how the other person receives your message. It includes their mood, the current mood in which they are while you're having conversation or any sort of communication, their interpretation of the message, their emotional filters, their belief system. All of that matters when the person receives the message. And this stage is called the reception stage. And then there is the fourth stage, which is called the residue. This is what's left unspoken or unresolved. Maybe they smile, but they feel hurt inside. Maybe you move on, but they're still held back, processing what you just said some time back. And all of this is nothing but residue. The residue of what is not really spoken, certain emotions which is heavy but not resolved. And the fifth and the final stage is the ripple. This is where the impact of your communication is. Days, weeks, months later, your team shuts down completely. Their morale goes down instantly. No trust, no productivity, people leaving your teams. What? Why? Because a ripple effect has happened. And this is the impact that your communication has left, the residue that you left has over and over time has impacted the culture of your team. It's a ripple effect that you've created. So now that we've introduced five stages, let's make this real. Let's take an example. One of your team member is wanting to come talk to you for a feedback, to receive a feedback. You give the team member a feedback. This is a one-on-one conversation. The first stage is intention. Your intention is to help your team member grow. Perfect. The second one is your expression. Your expression, let's say, is rushed. 15 minutes you had between two calls. So you're rushing to give the feedback. Now imagine the third stage, which is the reception. How does that person think or receive your feedback as? Reception is, she doesn't have time for me. Dismissal. So that is your reception. And the fourth one is residue. What is a residue that you're leaving behind in your karmic cycle? Confusion. Why does she not give me time? And the next one is the ripple. The final and the fifth stage is ripple. Withdrawal. The team member starts withdrawing. They stop asking you for feedback altogether. And that's how a whole karmic loop is built. Now imagine the opposite. The person comes to you asking for feedback. You say, I only have 15 minutes. Is that okay? You wait for another 1 hour. Let me finish that meeting, come back to you. You go back, you slow down, you acknowledge their strengths, you get curious of what is that feedback that they want. You don't get critical, but you feed forward your insights for improvement of the other person. And the whole loop closes very clean. The person is very happy, the energy is very clear, the whole karma is very light. It's essentially the same topic, right? Different loops, different results. And that's how we have to keep the karmic cycle very clean and keep the energy very light. Now, how do we use this as a diagnostic tool or put a mirror on our leadership? Because self awareness is equal to leadership karma. So now I want you to ask yourself after every important conversation that you've had in your workplace, was my intention aligned with my expression? I want that person to grow. Did my feedback also resonate in the expression stage? Did I check how it was received? Did I leave any residue that needs clearing? And what ripple, very importantly, am I creating? And this is how I want to lead my teams. This simple reflection builds powerful communication karma. And that builds culture, trust, psychological safety, high performing teams. So every time you ask yourself as a leader as to what am I closing the karmic loop complete, clean, lighter, which is very essential. All right, now that you understand the karmic loop, let's look at how it shows up when it is not working. In the next section, what we'll do is we'll look at some real world, real workplace symptoms of broken karma. What's broken karma? The kind of energy debt that slowly erodes your team, your culture, and the leadership impact. One example that I want to talk about the broken karma, how it looks like, is that let's say you were having this nice manager syndrome, but you have a nervous team. You've got a manager who says all the right things, great job, my door is always open for you, let's collaborate. But you still see the team always hesitates to start speaking up. They avoid conflict. Everybody is nice friends of everyone. Everybody wants to be nice to each other, polite. No one is being honest. Why? Because somewhere in the past interactions, the loop got broken. Maybe the feedback was once dismissed. Maybe vulnerability was met with a judgment by the leader. So that residue that once was created a ripple effect, which looks like the teams do not want to talk at all. And that is karmic communication debt. Let's look at another example the high performer who quits without a warning. Top performer suddenly resigns. Everyone looks at the person and being surprised. We all thought she was happy. But what is happening under the radar? She's been carrying months and months of micro disappointments. Her ideas being overlooked. Her manager praised outcomes but ignored the effort that she had put in. Her questions were met with impatience, and every interaction has left with a minute bit of residue. Nothing explosive, very minute. But what happened is there was emotional buildup which happened. It was not very visible, but one day she decides to walk away. And that is karma issue. And it just happens. And once the karma death had happened and then the ripple has happened, a culture is being formed. No amount of pizza parties or Friday stand-ups or outings can fix that. So now I want you to all think about where might the karma be leaking if you have now had a team which is not operating cohesively well. You might have to ask yourself this question where in my world my karma is leaking? A colleague you avoid because of one awkward moment, a team meeting that has actually ended on some level of tension, an important email that you have not replied but you should have. So these are signs of broken loops. They always don't scream and be very explosive, but they always silently echo, and that's how the triples form. So that's how karma happens. Now let's look at how do we rebuild trust? How do we heal the karma? Because we now know what is corporate karma. We know what is the karmic loop. We know how broken karma feels in workplace. Now the next step is to how to heal the karma. Let's move to solutions. Now, how do we start healing the energetic residue in our teams, in our communications, and for ourselves? Right? So, what I would like to tell is that the best part or the good news that I want to share is that the karma can be cleared because corporate karma is not permanent. You can clear the residue, you can close all the loops, you can shift the energy in a team meeting, in your teams, in your organizations, wherever it is, you can shift the energy. Just like what we saw in the war room in China. Because healing karma isn't about being perfect, it is just about being present, being aware, and being willing to realign the residue. So let me share you how. Three practices that shifts the energy immediately. There are three practices that I have seen shift the tone of the conversations instantly. It is very simple. It is deceptively simple. The first one is pause before you respond. Give space to your intention to catch up with your reaction. Every time before you speak, ask yourself, what is that energy that I want to bring into this? So that's pausing before you respond. The next one is to acknowledge the unspoken. Sometimes healings comes from saying, I think there's some tension in the room and we can't even name it. I sensed that this might not have landed really right. Can we talk about it? So this is about being a leader, understanding those residues which comes and catching and telling that, hey, can we talk about it? I sense some tension. Even when you can't name the tension, you can right away go ahead and talk about it. The third one is to reset the room. If the energy is heavy, call it out gently. It feels like this meeting got a little tense. Let's take a breath and start fresh. It's very important as leaders to catch a heavy room. And it is important to call it out gently and take a reset. Ask them to take a breathe, start fresh, do a mild activity so that the amygdala, which we all spoke about, because once the amygdala gets triggered, what happens is that the logical brain shuts down. And if you take a break, you play a game, what happens is that the logical brain gets control and amygdala gets subsided. It's not about control that you have on the team, it's about the clarity that you have for yourself. One of the most powerful things a leader can do is repair. Apologized, apologize if you know that you have rushed a reply. Revisit if you interpreted an email. Circle back to someone who might have unheard them in a meeting. And these are small acts, but they create massive energy shifts in your teams. Because leadership isn't about never messing up at all, because we are all humans as well. But what is important is that you're noticing when the energy went a little sideways and taking responsibility for the realignment. Because people never remember how you made them feel when you can do a repair and earn the trust faster than a perfection could ever have. So, as leaders, start repairing the cultural karma, the emotional karma that you're leaving behind. So, with this, let's lead ourselves first. Let's become that energetic thermostat. Every room that we walk into, lead with clarity, calm, care, and our communication will absolutely follow. Because the energy you bring is the culture that you create. And that, my friend, is corporate karma. So the next time you speak, lead with this awareness, create that alignment between your intention and the outcome that you're creating. And remember, your energy is the loudest message that you can have in the room. And that is the essence of corporate karma. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Kavina. You addressed it so beautifully. Sometimes, I
Thank
think
you. Thank you, Shiva.
it is a very common thing which happens. Sometimes we realize it later instead of during the conversation. So,
True.
would you like to suggest few ways that people can address it?
Absolutely. So, yes, we might, as humans, will go back home and then realize that something was not right. Something I felt as a tension and being heavy. It is absolutely okay to reflect it really later than the meeting. But what's important is to go back and either address in the team or address to an individual whom you might have thought a little bit shift in the energy to address to talk to them very openly with vulnerability and tell them that, hey, yesterday while having this conversation I felt something heavy. Is there something that we need to talk about? I don't know what really went wrong, but I could sense a strong misalignment between both of us. Can we address this now? Or even going and telling them that, hey, you were having a brilliant point. I'm so sorry I was rushing to close the meeting. And this was a reason why I did that. I would love to hear your ideas right now. or simply apologizing. Hey, I'm so sorry I couldn't let you talk. I had to cut short the meeting yesterday. Please accept my apologies. It could be as simple as that. So that's the repair that we do. But what beautifully, Shabana, you told is that maybe we will not realize it then. We will go back later in the point of day. We realize that something goes wrong, and if that can happen, you can beautifully go back to your team and repair the energy that has happened.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope
Yeah.
that helps.
Yes, it did. I think Rajvan wants to share. Rajvan,
Yes. Hi,
Um,
Rajvan.
okay, very good sharing, Kavina.
Thank you.
Okay, I get this a lot because many years ago, and that person still disturbs me until now. I told her that I don't. This is not my founder. This is from. This is not Miss Amazing, but this is from Inclusive Outdoor Classroom. She forces people to attend to the event, which I cannot. And she took away all my contacts, and my contacts don't listen to her. They still have faith in me. My contacts, my founder for Miss Amazing, she doesn't listen to Miss Anne. She doesn't listen to. They all have very beautiful relationship with me. So, I mean, this topic today, it resonates with me very much because uh, even even in the National Cancer Society of Malaysia, I I I I do have minor issues with uh, minor issues in the sense that they are, they are survivors, and the coordinator will say, oh, your voice is not clear, and then kind of thing, and that caught me a lot of stress, but it's okay. I just live for audiences who face communication barriers in the workplace. You know what I do? It is like live life laughingly and just ignore, and it just be yourself. So,
Absolutely.
but if you because but sometimes I do express myself, right, with the I do express myself in the sense that we have due to hypnotherapy, I have actually improved, as in being from being the queen of suppression to being more outspoken. I was like that before, but I would be afraid to speak out. But I because when I was afraid to speak out, I had recently, after pageantry and after the coffee pen issues, and 2 years ago, and I've been doing so well, and um, I just overcame my fear
Absolutely.
of suppression with hypnotherapy and laughter yoga, and it's kind of hard because if you say to the person the wrong thing,
Hmm.
person might get offended.
True, true. You're
So
furthermore suppressing the soul, the very soul of the person. Very true. And it is
sometimes
not always only the words that we
no,
speak.
so sometimes for the sake of the person, I do suppress my soul, which is not very good, which leads me to which leads me to anxiety, which
Hmm.
leads me to sinus, especially when I get sinus. The suppression is even more because I feel that you, I feel that I took time to listen to you, whether you're my parent or anything. I took time to listen to you when I was young. Why why people can't listen to me when I know it's right? When I know most of the time it they mean their best for me, but sometimes I like to express out my feelings so that I don't have a burden on my chest. That is what I was taught in laughter yoga. Don't vent out your feelings. And in the sense that I learned this subject very much in communication in the workplace. I learned it when I was studying Bachelor's of Communications. One of the subject was communication in the workplace
Hmm.
and conflict resolution. But
Nice.
I never took heed of it until it happened to me. So what happens to you now? You can all your bachelor's knowledge or bachelor's things, you can apply it. That is the beauty of working life. But what happens if a person, you understand the person, but what happens if the person does it over and over and over again? In my home front, my phone was hacked 2 years ago by my nephew. Still, still since yesterday, still the still some contacts have been disappeared. I don't know what it is. So I mean, like, why? Why this is happening? And not only communication in the workplace, communication at home front with parents is fine, but with nephew, and why nephews like to invade the privacy, and why it's like group think. All this is communication. So what do you do about it? Thank you.
You beautifully summarized what all has happened and how you have risen up like a phoenix. Truly
Yeah,
appreciable and
like
happy
a
to,
like a flower actually. You
yeah,
know,
like a flower. So you're that flower, Rajvin.
and
So
I
you
and I
beautifully answered it.
and
Yes.
I actually just turned 40, and I feel like celebrating my life for 1 year every single day
Mm-hmm.
with
Lovely.
friends, because every single person I feel like, I meet this person, I feel like sharing stories, which sharing sharing my journey, because I spoke to my founder yesterday of Miss Amazing Malaysia. She
Mm-hmm.
invited me into into her to her son's birthday, and she says, "Why don't you why are you so quiet? Why are you so quiet nowadays? You only share about laughter yoga. Well, I should start sharing motivation posts again.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that, and I can't get over my hormonal acne. As in, like, hormonal acne says that you have to think a certain way, you have to act a certain way. But I went to that talk in for the clinical psychologist, and she said, no, be be who you want to be. So I haven't seen my coworker, Mr. Warren Shanmugam, for very long, but I'm still gonna continue uh, doing for it. And I'm actually one of the speakers for maybe in spiritual fest. There I'm gonna
Brilliant.
there I'm gonna be sharing uh, laughter, and I think I'll add communication to laughter and
Sure.
communication is a synergy. Anyway, if you have any suggestions for my question, next session we will explore into this. Thank you.
So let's do that. Thank you very much for sharing, Rajwan. Means a lot.
Thank you, Rajwin. Thank you, Kavina. I think it was really wonderful. I think we can wrap it up now.
Sure,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you then.
Yeah. Thank you
Bye.
so much.